All right, yep, you are up there on the stream. You are good to go. I'll give your quick intro. Suspector's here. His talk is car hacking, a college student's perspective. In this presentation, Nico will provide an overview of targets and show some car hacks. We'll also go through common tools we can all use to accomplish our goals. So, yes, thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us. This is the last talk of Level Up, and we're ending on a good one. So, take us away, Nico.
All
I'm
right,
so
so
excited. This is good.
Oops,
Thanks so much,
sorry.
man.
Yeah, it
yeah,
was,
yeah, no problem.
Jason, if you wanted to jump in, I'm sorry about that.
No, I was just nerding out. I'm super excited about this song. That's all.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I'm Nico. I'm, 23, college student. I hack cars, and I've, done a bunch of private bug bounties with Jason and Sam. They know me and a couple of my friends kind of well because I am always trying to bring people out and do car hacking stuff with me. So, uh, hope you guys enjoy. So, before we start, there are a couple of things that you should not do. And one of those is, don't go out and steal cars after I teach you how to steal cars. Cool. So, a couple of things. Please play with your own toys. Share as much information as possible. It's super useful for the community. Um, do not break NDAs while sharing information, as a lot of that is involved in bug bounties and such, as previous people have said. But try to be like as general as possible, help people, reach out. You guys can always reach out to me or a group of my friends. We're always trying to get more people interested in car hacking. It's really fun, and people always come with new and different perspectives, so it's always good to have. And most importantly, have fun while doing it, because car hacking is one of the most rewarding experiences you can have. The Yeah. A little bit about who I am. My name is Nico. My handle is Spectres. I am currently studying cybersecurity. I wouldn't say I'm like a full-fledged hacker yet because I still have a lot that I can improve on personally, but that's always a goal, right? So I'm always working towards it and trying to meet my own personal goals to say like I am now a full-fledged hacker. I skateboard in my spare time. My OPSEC is complete garbage, so one of those goals I have to meet. And once again, hack cars for fun. So what's this talk about? Mostly it's going to be about like hacking cars on a tight budget, because when I first got into this, I was obviously in college. I have a bunch of loans that I need to pay off for school. So, I didn't have a lot of money at the time. So there are ways to get around these issues by, building your own hardware, using open source tools. There's a ton of things out there, and we're going to go over a little bit of those in the slide, as well as like more expensive tools that I eventually adopted as I was getting like more and more bounties submitted. So more specifically, we're going to go over car basics. We're going to go through my personal methodology of hacking into cars, which we'll touch on later after we go into getting initial access. I'm going to talk about tools. I'm going to talk about software, and then I'm going to tell you guys how you can get onto cars. And then maybe after that, I have a little bit of time to possibly show a ECU simulator, and like how to get onto the CAN bus, how to drop root shells on IoT devices and like radio systems. So go over that in a minute. So recommended knowledge, these are not required, because I definitely don't know all of these, but it will help you in just car hacking and in general, right? So you always want to keep learning. So having a basic understanding of how car works and how it operates, because then you can like choose specifically what you want to target. Like nobody's gonna care if you change the tire sensor value or like the air pressure value of your tires to 0 on a car. It's like, oh, woo, you're making alerts happen on the system. But people are gonna care if you like legitimately like maybe mess around with the trans and it breaks something, because that'll be like a big issue after that. So we're gonna go over well, I mean, pretty much having an understanding of like just different protocols like ADB, SSH, Telnet. Being able to reverse engineer is a really big one that I personally am struggling with, that I'm always trying to build on. Um, a lot of car systems use different programming languages. It's pretty much all over the place in terms of development. Some use like an Android front end, or like an Android like system, and then some will use like some random Linux kernel, right? So like, for example, Tesla uses Ubuntu. Mind blowing, right? They write their own C, C++ code to run their own personalized softwares. which is also really cool. So we're gonna go over car basics. As you could probably tell, cars have computers. I know, right? Woo. So this is actually an ECU. So an ECU is pretty much a car's way of handling different types of messages between sensors. It's like the liaison between those two. So this will pretty much direct each sensor where to go, how to respond. This stores all of its sensor information, and you can pretty much like reprogram different cars and different sensors with this. Continuing, introduction to ECUs. As you can see, these are like the diagnostic center right in the center. That is an ECU, and this communicates with, exhaust gas, oxygen sensors, tons of things. So, there could be hundreds of sensors in a car that you can mess around with. Engine control unit is what ECU means, and it has two-way communication. So you could actually have a send and receive values for all of this. So that's really cool, because if I send, let's say, a value to unlock the doors, well, now I just got into the car. Now I'm stealing the car, right? So, here's an example of pretty much a CAN message that we have up here. So pretty much, like you could have multiple sensors in a single CAN message, and this value right here, which is 1, 2, 3, is that specific sensor, and then these values control something on that specific sensor. So that specific sensor can be used for one part of the car, but it controls multiple things in that. So, like engine oil, right? So it could tell you the levels of engine oil, it could tell you the heat, and a couple of other values that would be mixed in there as well. So car radios are also computers. Very interesting, I know. This is actually an Android auto system that I personally want to build, but people have already built out. So really easy to set up. You can buy a Raspberry Pi, you can buy a screen, and you can start practicing, like messing around with some of the like kernel stuff that you could do once you get an initial foothold onto the system. So what type of systems do infotainment systems run? And infotainment systems, by the way, are car radios. Sorry if I get a little confusing. First off, we have Android, made by Google, so it follows a couple of Google standards, which is pointed out by one of my friends, Buses Can Fly. QNX, which is surprisingly made by BlackBerry. It's a Linux subkernel, really interesting and used on a ton of cars. So, definitely you could download it for free online, like a developer version. You could start messing around with that too. We have Windows Automotive. It's all right. I've seen cars have it, and they have very silly things associated with them. But hopefully that gets fleshed out in the future. And then we have Ubuntu, which obviously I think by now everyone knows that Tesla cars have a Ubuntu, Linux distribution onto their infotainment systems, like the giant pad screen. What protocols are on all these systems? Glad you asked. First off, we have we have ADB on Android. So ADB is pretty much how you can drop local shells for debugging Android information, or to like add programs, do a couple of things. A lot of people who are hacking Android devices will pretty much drop ADB shells onto these devices, and then send pulls to get APK files or something of that sort, right? Pretty much to get applications and things like that, or to mess around with the kernel a little bit. SSH, very common protocol. It's used to just remote in. Sometimes it's locally within the car, or it could be externally over GSM, Wi-Fi, or anything else, right? Like it could be over like a telephone network. QNX also has SSH. Windows surprisingly has RDP and SSH. Ubuntu has SSH, and obviously everyone's favorite. All of them have Telnet, which is sometimes really ridiculous. It's almost like developers specifically want to pick on security people, and they're like, we're just going to use an outdated version of Telnet, and it's going to drop straight into a root shell, which is something I saw on Twitter recently with another car that had like a Windows distribution on it. So that was also really cool. A couple of the interfaces. So once again, we have Wi-Fi, USB, LTE, GSM, all these like wireless ways to get into the cars. I've seen stuff over HDMI. I've seen Tesla's own like Ethernet to weird adapter type port. So there's tons of different ways that you could like mess around with the interfaces on cars, and a lot of cars have really interesting things like associated with them. So I've seen examples of interesting interfaces like you could tap a corner of the screen 4 or 5 times and it would open up a shell and it would just give you root access to a car. And like that's something that a lot of vehicle manufacturers are like looking out for now. So you won't see it as much, but these things still exist out in the world. Um, so my methodology. Well, we're going to talk about goals first. So what are some of the goals that you want to accomplish? Um, just kidding. You don't actually want to light a car on fire. But I'm sure if you did, you would make tons of money, like tons of hush money, because they would be like, "Don't tell anyone ever." um, but yeah, so the goal is to either compromise user data. So we pretty much want to like jump onto, let's say, an Android system and start messing around with, the user's personal information, like where they live, where they're going, what are the last 3 places they visited, what's their current GPS location. These are all things you can do inside of some of these radio systems. Is you can totally just like dox that person and find out everything about them. If you could do that remotely, that's like a big deal to a lot of people. Just because like you could start tracking very important people. So another thing is you can try to gain access to one of the many car computers. So getting external access to ECUs or wireless access to ECUs pretty much means that you have a way that you can damage the car. In some cases, there are firewalls that try to prevent this, but if you can circumvent that firewall, that's also another big bounty that like you just got for yourself. So there's a standard out in the U.S. of allowing engineers and like local automotive shops to be able to read data from the ECUs. So this comes with, obviously gains and flaws, right? Like you're letting a ton of people be able to rebuild cars, do everything with cars that they need to, but you're also giving them partial access to the car's computers. And this becomes an issue just like when someone sends an ECU reset to the car, there's some functionality you could lose if somebody's like in the middle of driving, you hack their car radio and you send that message. So it's always really interesting things to look at. So getting remote or local root on an infotainment system, once again, this goes with the other 2 things, which is if you jump onto a radio system to get user data, or if you jump on there to send messages to the car specifically, you're pretty much going to be able to control the car in multiple ways. Excuse me. So if you can find a way to make it easier to steal a car, such as unlocking doors and starting a car, that's also a big deal. A lot of companies will look at that and be like, okay, there's going to be like, big publicity around this, or people are going to start stealing cars in, certain areas, or, all over the place. Or they're just going to do it for fun, right? Like these are things that companies will think about in terms of car hacking. If you can hack or clone key fobs, this is like also a huge deal, just because you could potentially clone, or you could like hack the entropy to some key fobs, and you could just start unlocking all the certain like specific cars that were made by this specific company. Also very big deal. You don't want that. So you definitely don't want that information shared. But yeah, so these are some of the goals that, as a hacker myself, I am trying to accomplish while I'm hacking cars. So how do we practice this? It's kind of hard for myself as a college student to be like, hey, I'm just gonna go buy this car and start doing research on it, which, that's a legitimate thing that people can do. You can borrow a friend's car. I've had multiple instances so far where I was interested in Tesla hacking, and I had somebody reach out to me that was like, hey, I'm interested in adding these binaries to my Tesla. I will let you hack my car if you can help me try to figure this out. And like dropping root shells on Teslas is cool, and being able to just hack that car is just such a great experience that I can go like use it somewhere else. Obviously you could buy the car. There are researchers that will like legitimately like rent the car, buy the car, park it in their like garage, and then just start like doing stuff on it. I have access to a garage because I'm friends with one of like a local automotive person, so he lets me use his garage to like lift cars, mess around with it sometimes, and then I get to like take that research, go home. Usually I just like read canned messages and then replay them at home to try to figure out like, which specific canned messages work with specific sensors and things like that. You can buy parts that you think are exploitable. So you can buy ECUs online, and you could buy radio infotainment systems online. Just a quick Google search of the specific year, make, and model of the car, and then what part it is, and then you just go on eBay or you go anywhere else and you could just buy it. ECUs usually range like anywhere from 70 to like $300, right? So buying one is a little bit harder, but to circumvent that, you just go to a junkyard. This is my favorite thing to do. You just go to a junkyard and you rip one out, and then you try to convince the person that you're, bartering with, because, ECUs aren't a common thing that people just take from junkyards. And you can just like be like, hey, I'll buy this piece of metal for $20. Try to convince them you're gonna scrap it or something. But it works more often than not, which is usually a really fun time. So a couple of the tools we use. There's tons of tools out there. Obviously, I'm not going to mention all of them in this slide. I am going to, however, mention like a couple of cheap ones that I like personally. So just for communicating with the CAN bus or the OBD2 port, we have the CANTech, the Canable, MintyNet, who is another researcher that made his own hardware. If you meet him, I think you can actually just ask him for one of his business cards. He might give you one for free. Might have to convince him. And then he'll tell you how to like create the hardware. Great researcher, great dude, knows what he's doing. ValueCAN is another one. ValueCAN is made mostly for Windows systems, and like they have like other versions of the ValueCAN that can work with like Linux kernels and stuff. But pretty much it's a little bit more expensive, but you get the nice software package with it that pretty much gives you like ease of use, easier functionality, easier setup. It gives you like a whole really nice GUI where you don't have to really type a lot of commands. So if you're trying to get maybe like an introduction to car hacking, I know that Intrepid Systems goes to DEF CON and they reduce the price of their ValueCAN stuff. So you can go and like buy one there. Or you can go to a local con maybe that Intrepid's at and try to buy one off of them. Other than that, on the website, it's listed for $150 and up, depending on which version you get. And they're really good. I personally use one. I like it a lot. The new USB to CAN is out actually too. So it's $69. I bought one recently and I really like it. It works well. Once again, just some of these things are a little bit expensive. If you're really just trying to get an introduction to car hacking and you kind of just want to like read messages from a car and maybe mess around with it a little bit, I would really suggest the Canable. Very small, very lightweight, very easy setup. Gives you the whole guide online, and everything about it is super simple. Some key fob hardware if you're trying to like clone or hack like radio frequency stuff or like car keys itself. You could buy Proxmarts to like do close range attacks on them. You could buy like blade RFs or hack RFs or yardsticks to like try to intercept messages or doing like rolling jams or things like that. Most of the time people will intercept messages and try to figure out how these keys are doing these challenges in response, and these are all good tools to use. Once again, though, all of these are really expensive. I think all of these are like $100+. So if you wanted to, you could probably get an SDR and still accomplish the same goal. You just have to make sure it's under, I think like 1 gigahertz to be able to like read some of the values, or like 500 megs, I think is around usually what those values are. Maybe a little higher or lower from there. But yeah. So some of the software we use for all Unix and Linux distributions. So for the RF key stuff, we have RFCat. I've seen some great vulnerabilities get exposed with this tool. I've seen a bunch of crypto stuff get cracked with this tool. A lot of great things have been accomplished with this tool, so I really enjoyed that one. There's a bunch of other tools, and there's a repo of awesome like car hacking stuff on GitHub, which is also really great to look at. Hacking Android tools. Obviously, you just want to get Android tools for ADB access. If you're going to hack a CAN bus, you can use Scapy, which is like an open source Python repo that pretty much lets you craft your own types of packets, and you can communicate to and from the car with that tool. Very cool. It supports CAN. Didn't know that until recently. CAN utils, which is pretty much a already written like it's like a repo of pretty much like C code that communicates with the CAN bus. So you have like CAN dump, which will display a bunch of things, CAN player, which can actually replay log files from CAN dump specifically, CAN send, which can send single and multiple messages. CanGen, which you can actually brute force a bunch of specific sensors and stuff. CanSniffer, which gives you a nice like display to view all these messages. So to get to pretty much set up, we have SocketCAN and SLCAN, which is dependencies that you're going to need. So you're going to need the daemon for some CAN interfaces and stuff, which comes with CAN utils. I think it just comes precompiled in the same package once you set it up. So software for Windows. Once again, you have RFCat because it's open source. It should work on both. May take a little bit more setup. You have Cantact, the application, which is a pre-built application that you just download on your computer and then you use it to communicate with stuff. CAN utils, once again, which has all those other C code tools. Wireshark actually reads CAN stuff as well because it communicates over serial. So, and you can plug right into USB. You can also download ADB for Windows computers, giving you shells that you can drop onto, Android systems. We have Vehicle Spy, which is like the really nice version that Intrepid owns. And this is like a free trial for it pretty much, but this is one of the easier systems. So if you've had more money and you wanted to car hack a little bit easier, replay messages easier and stuff, you have Vehicle Spy that you can pretty much use. Once again, cost comes with ease of use, right? So then we have Scapy again, which you can craft your own messages and just communicate with things. So what I carry on me personally, I have a value can for Windows with Vehicle Spy. I think I have version 4. So it specifically only works for Windows. I have not figured out how to set up the Linux driver that they had for it. I think it is online. Gonna have to ask somebody later. Canable, once again, this was like my quick, easy introduction to car hacking with that. Especially when I like wanted to switch over to more open source tools. I use that. MintyNet's NanoCan, and he has another tool, but the ESP like 32 CAN communication device, which is listed on the right. So those are some pictures of that tool. I carry a USB 2.0 cable, Type A to Type A. And pretty much that's just like if cars have USB, there's some cases where you plug into that USB and it'll like trying to assign you an IP, or it has a shell that you could run through ADB. Tons of different things that you can do just to get onto systems. So I also have USB to Ethernet, which once again, surprisingly, some cars have IPs being assigned over USB stuff. So once you connect up to it, it just you can like scan a bunch of stuff and then try to drop shells. So I also carry a logic analyzer. There's a couple online that are really cheap, only like a couple of dollars. Let's see, which one do I have? Oh, it's in Chinese. Pretty much I like went on eBay or like Alibaba and bought mine. I think I ordered mine for $8. It was $2 shipping and handling, so anywhere from $10 to $15 in total. Really good tool, really good to have. I really want to get a Saley one, but just not willing to spend that much. I carry soldering iron. I carry pins, wires, solder, obviously, and then I carry UART to USB, which is used for hardware hacking. And then I also carry 2 laptops, one Linux and one Windows. I specifically use Parrot OS because it just comes with all the tools that I need for car hacking precompiled. But I have also used like Pen 2 in the past, which is a Gen 2 security distribution. I just like hated my life when I tried to compile anything else, especially drivers. So I stopped using it. So some of the CAN bus basics. So pretty much we have DW CAN, which is a dual wire CAN. So essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 wires, we're going to plug them into specific ports, and that should give us CAN messages. So as you can see, ISO 15765 -4 is pretty much the CAN high, CAN low ports, which is used on most vehicles. So essentially you could just take 2 wires, you can plug them in, and then you can start, doing enumeration. You can get a logic analyzer and analyze some of the CAN messages on there, which is really cool. And then these are just like graphs explaining how they work. There's a lot of things involved with CAN, and there's a lot of different ways that it communicates. So don't take this graph and like think it's just going to work instantly. Some cars have security systems in place to try to prevent you sending TX messages, right? Which is transmit messages, or some cars will have specific like values you'll need to send just to receive messages, right? So this one gets a little bit more complicated. These are pretty much the structure of CAN messages. So here in the top right image on the left side, we have first off the start of the frame, which is almost always going to start with a 0. And then we have the arbitration field. The arbitration field is pretty much like a sensor ID. So essentially, when we go into the arbitration field and we're looking at it, we add up these 1s and 0s, and we come back with a specific sensor that can control, who knows what, unless it's listed somewhere in documents. After that, we have RTR, which is a remote transmission request, which I personally haven't used, and that's usually always set to 0 for me as well. But there are cases where you can use them, and that's listed in like CSS Electronics, or you can go to SAE's website and read the standard for those. We have control fields, which pretty much just tells you like the length of the message that you're about to get or send. We have the data field, which is all your sensor values. So like if you had FF, which is 255, you're pretty much telling a specific sensor to go to max value or to do something specific, right? And most of the time when ECUs are programmed, they're usually programmed to do like a greater than X value, or they're programmed to meet a specific value. So doing FF on like fuzzing with FFs is sometimes really good and can just be quick to identify some like car utilities, like what they do. And I personally use it to like find out which one is going to be like unlocking the door, which is usually 1C0. So my arbitration field would be 1C0, and then I'd spam it. I spam all the data fields with FFs, and it unlocks the doors. And then after that, we just have the normal like acknowledge field, end of frame field, and the communication fields. So yeah, and then down here in the bottom left, we have 29-bit messages, which are longer sensor IDs, but shorter data fields, or the same length data fields, but just longer sensor IDs. So you could pretty much add a ton more sensors in a car with these. So these are both standards under SAE 9141, I believe. So CAN is used in a ton of things. I have some of them listed above, but most of the ones I use obviously are car OBD2 ports, CAN FD. I have actually seen a lot of construction devices have CAN messages on them. And I've also seen hospital devices use CAN messages, which is kind of crazy to me. So CAN is used on just tons of different machinery, which is really cool. So getting initial access to a car. Once again, we're gonna want to start from the outside and make our way into the car, right? So the first thing that people are usually gonna think of is the key fob. Or like, I want to be able to unlock the door with the key fob, and I want to be able to get access to the car. Well, there's already great research done on that, and I've seen it done. I personally don't do a lot of RF stuff, but I'm trying to learn currently. But you obviously need like good crypto skills. You're gonna be able to take RF, RF data and be able to like clone specific keys, or you can like crack like specific like hardware values that is being generated on keys, and then you could just like break into cars. So in one of the Tesla examples, which is like the Tesla key fob hack, we actually have Leonard who's walking by, and he takes a Proxmark and he clones somebody's ID. Then he goes back to the car, and then he uses that to pretty much unlock the car, take it, and steal it, which is really awesome. It was like my first time seeing it. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. You can find that online. Websites listed below, obviously. And there's a lot of great research that Leonard puts into that. So I would definitely defer to him on any of the key fob car hacking stuff. So what types of car sensors do we have? So externally to the vehicle, we will have pretty much like LiDAR, or we'll have like some weird infrared camera that like guides the car in specific directions and stuff. Or we have like car tire sensors that we can get access to the vehicle with. Finding like external parts of the car and making your way in is really interesting, just because like I could grab a car tire sensor and I can plug directly into that, and then I can unlock the doors. I can start the car. Maybe I could drive the car away. Usually like there's immobilizers in place for that, but all of these things are possible. If I can get access to the inside of the car and unlock the doors, I can pop the hood, I can replace the ECU, I can take the car away. Like these are all things that matter, but I won't be affecting multiple cars at once. So one of the big things in bug bounties that's kind of shifting towards, I think, a better change is, instead of affecting a single car, you affect like hundreds of cars or thousands of cars. So you have like other sensors on the back, like parking sensors. Tesla has like guidance sensors on the front to like steer people. I've seen there was an example of somebody placing stickers on the ground and pretty much making a Tesla like able to like drive off a road, or it was like identifying it as something as like a specific object that it needed to avoid. Also very interesting. And then we have like cars with once again like different types of radars, GPS, lidar. There's sometimes cameras that are external, but that one specifically had an internal camera. But yeah, these are one of the things you could try to get access to just to get inside of the car. So next we have the OBD2 port. When we get inside of the car, pretty much the first place you're going to go and you're going to want to look at is the OBD2 port. Why? Because you can pretty much enumerate every possible value in OBD2 or in these CAN messages, and you can try to identify all the different types of sensors, what they do, how they do it, things like that. So this is just a quick slide on like setting up CAN bus hacking hardware. I'm not going to go over it, but I have it in the slides just so when people go back and download it. Yeah. So here's an example of some CAN messages. So once again, we have our arbitration IDs, which is like 111 right at the top. The length is 8. And these are some of the values, right? So essentially like, so 1C0 is a good one. 1C0 is usually used to unlock and lock and unlock doors. And I always find that value is like spread across a lot of cars. I think it like involves like specific standards probably or whatever it may be. But if you send value like for I don't know, like 4A, the car doors will lock. If you send 4C, the car doors will unlock, right? So essentially you're just going through and like fuzzing all of these. So once again, just spamming FF on these two, which these are all hex. So, or you can do it in binary as well. Spamming like a value larger than a specific value may activate some functionality in the car, or you have to meet a specific value, which just requires a little bit of brute forcing, which these CAN messages literally communicate at like 25 milliseconds or 250 milliseconds. So you have a lot of time. This top one is actually Vehicle Spy, and this is Intrepid's like specific system. So it pretty much gives you like everything you need to know. I actually handmade all of these TX messages a couple nights ago, and I just wanted to kind of give you like a visualization of what this tool looks like. At the bottom, we have CAN dump, which once again is another tool that's used on Linux instead. And you have the ARB IDs, which are the sensor IDs, and then you have the length of the messages, and then you have the specific messages themselves. So very interesting slide to look at. Definitely go out and try the tools yourself. Always really good. So getting initial access to the infotainment system. So this image actually, I thought I had the source under it, but apparently it kind of moved. This is the Ubuntu system that's on the Tesla cars. Very cool. Somebody actually dropped a root shell, and we got these images and stuff, and we were pretty much able to look at it. I believe the way they dropped the shell too was just connecting that like specific Ethernet cable, and then yeah, like their weird like interface cable that comes out to Ethernet, and connecting their computer, running a scan on it, and then found some open ports that they eventually ended up exploiting. Don't quote me on that because there's a bunch of different ways you could do it. You can reflash portions of like chips on there, and that'll drop you into shells. I've seen a lot of people do that too. Also really good way to get initial access. So if we go back to this slide, we pretty much have all these protocols once again. Let's try to keep this in mind when we go into like those infotainment systems and we're trying to get initial access, right? Like we should be doing the normal steps that it takes to get initial access to a computer, right? If we're trying to get access to the radio specifically, because all it is underlining is just going to be like a regular computer. So you need to enumerate it like you would, and then just like scan it for exploits like anything else. QNX doesn't have a large, I guess, like database of exploits for it. There's been like more and more release as time goes on just because it's a widely used system. But most of the time you're just going to find like weird misconfigurations in custom apps, custom applications that are being made by developers. You're going to find like weird backdoors that developers make to try to get access to a, root shell. Those are happening less frequently too. So as time goes on, you're going to need really good reverse engineering skills just to be able to reverse like assembly code to make exploits, right? Like, so now that all of these applications are moving to a less, misconfigured way, you're going to have to start finding exploits in, code, right? Like find deprecated code that's used in these things to maybe, do a buffer overflow and then execute shell code, right? Like there's tons of different ways to go about it. And if all else fails, you pretty much have, once again, your hardware hacking skills. So this is going to be like the biggest underlining thing that you're going to use to at least get initial access, right? So there's a bunch of different things you do. UART and JTAG are still two big things that can drop you into at least user shells. I've seen cases where I've like gone to a radio system, I got a UART shell on it, and then it was a root shell. And it was like, oh, well, that just gave me access to literally everything I wanted. And then from there, we're pretty much, once again, downloading custom apps, reversing them, seeing how we could affect more than one specific system. How can I reach out to, backend databases that this is communicating with? How can I still use your data? All things to keep in mind, right? So to do this, essentially all you need is like 4 pins, and you would solder them to either here or here, and just see what data comes out. So I'd use like a logic analyzer before just like plugging directly into it, and maybe this will like drop you into a shell. So there's great resources online. devttys0.com is one of them that just teaches you how to reverse serial ports. This one's like very basic and just in terms of like this drops a UART shell, this will drop you into a root shell, and you're done, right? Whereas like there's some things where you drop into a shell and you'll have to get the whatever the device is to start rebooting, and then you kill the boot process or you like interrupt the boot process somehow by either shorting out some pins or spamming Control C or Control Z, which is very common. Like those things will literally drop you into shells as well. So like IoT hacking pretty much applies to car hacking in itself, just to get like initial access onto the radio system, and then to later like enumerate all the different processes, all the different files that are on that system, and to go back and pretty much be able to exploit those things remotely, right? So like this isn't going to be a big bounty value, because like if you drop a hardware hacking, like if you drop a UART shell onto a radio system, anyone's just going to be like, okay, well, you need physical access to do that. But for an example, attacker is going to buy this radio system, take it home, drop a UART shell, take all of those files, and then make exploits for all of the custom applications running on this. They're going to enumerate services. They're going to see if this communicates with GSM at all. They're going to see if this firmware is vulnerable. There's just a tons of things you can do once you get this, but this itself is not worth any value, right? In terms of like monetary value. If you submitted this as a vuln, that's great. It helps the it helps the automotive manufacturer identify their process in terms of like shipping these things out and not like fusing these specific UART ports or serial ports or anything. So still reporting these are great for people to know, and like you at least get credit for it. And then you get a little bit of satisfaction knowing that you can still do this, and you could pretty much take this and enumerate everything else, right? So other things I've seen people do is like remove Flash. I've seen people like reprogram Flash. Oh my God. Some people are crazy. Like they will literally take some of the chips off and then just start reading directly off of them. Very cool, very interesting. I've been part of a process once where we did that and we bricked something. I've also seen the process of somebody just literally touching, like putting a piece of metal between 2 pins, like a coin, and it dropped them into a shell. Like mind-blowing stuff. So those are some of the ways to get like initial access. And then once again, after that, it's like, even if you go through all of these processes of trying to get initial access on the system, the thing that's going to matter most to automotive developers or automotive manufacturers is they're going to want to see you do it remotely, right? Like they're going to want to see you affect more than one vehicle. They're going to like these things are going to only start increasing as time goes on. And then once we start implementing, vehicle to vehicle communication or vehicle to emergency vehicle communication, they're going to want to see people start hacking that stuff, right? Like they're going to want to see multiple vehicles get hacked, or they're going to want to see an exploit that's able to stop these types of communications, right? Because I think it's VDE. So vehicle to like emergency vehicle communication, if that gets cut off, then there's an issue, right? Like somebody could potentially die, which is something a lot of people would be worried about. So just keeping that stuff in mind is always good. And then seeing like where the future is headed. There's going to be a lot more of just like doing stuff remotely or like versus like doing stuff locally on a car. Because if you could affect more than one vehicle, that's really important. If you can track people remotely, that's really important. A lot of car companies definitely do not want that. Whereas like, if you can pull out a radio system and hack it, once again, like that's not something as valuable to them. But once again, good enumeration step, really would suggest it. Very easy to do, very easy to learn as well. There's a lot more advanced stuff you can do with it as well. Quick shout outs. So these are all my friends that I work with. Love all of them. Some of the people in the Thug Crowd group, actually pretty much everyone in the Thug Crowd group, very great community to talk with. I've learned so much from this community. They have given so much to me in terms of knowledge and like resources that I can use that I will probably never be able to repay them. So I'm doing a shout out for them. Once again, I like, if not, Pike does radio frequency stuff or RF hacking stuff, and he pretty much can tell you how to get a ham radio license. Shell does red team pen testing stuff. Not Dan does a ton of awesome research stuff. Net Spooky does a ton of reverse engineering stuff. Same with RQU and Buses Can Fly. Buses Can Fly does car hacking stuff. RQU does car hacking stuff. There's a ton of people out there that you can communicate with, and they're like more than willing to help and talk to you. Leonard and Minty, also people mentioned in the slides. They create hardware. They create, a bunch of different exploits for cars too. And then Jaku is just one of like a personal friend. He pretty much got me the contact with like a person who owned a Tesla, and I was able to hack it. So, and I'm like still meeting up with this person, trying to hack their car pretty much. So great times. Pretty much everything else locally. SAE, if you are in college, I highly recommend you sign up for SAE. Pretty much they teach you how to hack in the cars, and they allow people from I think around the world to pretty much they like pay for your flight, or you could like I think it's like a scholarship system. So you sign up for a scholarship, you fly out to Michigan, a bunch of car automotive manufacturers come out and they let you hack cars. They teach you how to hack cars. They have trainings. The knowledge I've only been car hacking for 1 year, but the amount of knowledge that I gained from SAE is just amazing. The gentleman that actually taught me below is this picture here. That's Decker. He actually was on a History Channel series called Forged with Fire, like where he made like old medieval weapons, which is really cool. And then obviously like shout out to Bug Crowd. I could not have gotten into car hacking as much as I did without them pretty much accepting my random reach out of, hey, I want to hack cars. I want to try a bug bounty and hack cars. Will you let me try? And then I found something, and lo and behold, they were like, you should come out more. You should come hang out. You're a really cool dude. And I really love Bug Crowd. They've really helped me out in just a bunch of ways. My local DEF CON group, I present car hacking stuff there. I'm, trying to present more, trying to reach out more. I really want to give back, just because of how many people have helped me. And then once again, Thug Crowd, we have a Twitter. So, follow, sub, whatever else, gang stuff. And then if you like the images, I actually got the images from a artist that was online. I really loved his artwork. So all of the background images and pretty much like all the really nice ones were made by this artist. He actually does create his own content. He's also a photographer. He loves teaching. He loves giving back to the community. From what I can tell, he seems like an awesome dude. So, I reached out to him and I asked for his artwork. So that's pretty much it. I was trying to do like a full knowledge dump of everything I had. Does anyone have any questions? No big deal. Like I said, if you guys want to reach out to me, my personal information is @_specters_ on Twitter. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much the best way to reach out to me. I'm also in the Bug Crowd uh, researcher, the Bug Crowd community Discord channel. So I'm at Lame. So yeah, I'm also on there. So you can always reach out to me as well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Nico. I know the bits that people did see, because the stream was up for most of it, but it would every once in a while kind of spits and sputter or whatever, I guess, on the YouTube side. But people were giving you good feedback, so I appreciate it.
Oh,
And we will have a full, I have a full locally recorded version that's going to be uploaded, in the next couple days.
yeah, for sure. So like I said, if anyone wants to reach out, feel free. Thank you, Sam. Thanks, Haddix. I really appreciate you guys inviting me to this stuff. I need to like start doing this more.
It's all good. We
So,
really, really
yeah.
appreciate you sharing your knowledge and giving back. Like you said, a lot of people help us get to where we are, and it's great that you're able to kind of turn that back around and help others, bring them up to where you're at. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime.